there is the experience of being taken or leaving this dimension.
We have hundreds and thousands of people who are coming forward and saying that the abduction phenomenon has happened to them.
I'm the first to admit that it all just sounds outrageous. It all sounds just crazy, and yet the evidence is there behind it.
She asked me, did I want to meet Bud Hopkins? And I said, who's he?
Belong to secret societies who have infiltrated our society and our government at all levels and are destroying it and subverting it from within. And every member of naval intelligence that I knew who was an officer was a 32nd or a 33rd degree Freemason. And I asked my commanding officer at one point, I said, why are all you guys Masons? He said, Masons are used to keeping secrets. It's part of their fraternity. So if you want someone who already knows how to keep a secret, you recruit Freemasons. Well, later on I found out what the truth is. The truth is you're not going to be a naval intelligence officer unless you are a Freemason or a member of the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, but you have to be high degrees for that. I think the reason I was selected as enlisted man is because I had belonged to the Demolay Society.
Which is why,
as a teenager. That's sort of the first level of Freemasonry. That's how they recruit teenagers and indoctrinate them into their principles so that they go right into Freemasonry when they become an adult.
Here I want to refer you to the work of my friend Dr. Rick Strassman, who's professor of psychiatry at the University of New Mexico, and who got the first permission from the US federal government for more than 20 years to conduct research with human volunteers on a powerful hallucinogen. And he used DMT. And DMT given to his volunteers produced really extraordinary results. They recorded their experiences. I won't read all of these out, but elves and alien type experiences were again and again reported by these people who were given DMT on a hospital bed in the University of New Mexico. Could it be that? Well, no, because there's a work done with DMT and human volunteers in the 1950s. Now, that's important because not a single abduction case was reported before 1961. Not one. There were many UFO sightings, but no abduction case. But these DMT volunteers in the 1950s were reporting experiences that are very similar to those being reported by modern UFO abductees. So it's more like the culture is getting the imagery from these visionary experiences rather than that the culture is feeding into the imagery. Furthermore, Strassman's volunteers definitely were not being abducted by physical aliens because they were lying there on a hospital bed in front of Rick Strassman. So does that mean that this was just brain candy? That these experiences were just meaningless hallucinations? And if they were, then how come all of the volunteers were reporting the same experiences? And this leads us to ask, what actually is reality?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what a human being can experience in a hospital bed. I mean, they can experience almost the whole universe. You know, life, death, everything in between.
This is the story of DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, a simple compound found throughout nature which has profound effects on human consciousness.
We gave one gentleman who had a lot of experience with the drug one dose, and he didn't think it took him far enough. So then we gave him a higher dose, and he was gone. He was really gone. It reminded me of something from The Exorcist. I mean, he just boom, sat bolt up in the bed, and his eyes opened up, and they were completely dilated and black. And I almost thought he was going to turn his head completely around. And I remember looking at Rick, and Rick looked at me, and I thought, oh my God, he's gone. I hope he comes back. And he did.
The countdown was like, you know, counting down for preparing for your death, like waiting to surrender. And you'd feel the coldness, and the coldness just going through your veins, and it's really indescribable. It's hard to, you know, it's like ice going through your veins. And the next thing that would happen, besides my racing heart, is this burning sensation would happen on the back of my neck. I mean, this was reliable. This is like clockwork. This happened every time that you shot me up with DMT. And then there'd be a hum, and the hum would get louder and louder, and to the point where it broke apart everything that I was or knew. It was just this. It just got louder and louder until you just had to surrender to the sound. And then you were there.
I saw the city in the deep, deep distance that was dark green, and all these lights flickering and clouds flowing over it. And this all started after tremendous geometric patterns that are incredibly rapid that you cannot describe to anybody. They're so fast. After those had slowed down, I saw this city in the deep distance. So I was sort of watching that, and then this ball of light goes right past me, right in front of me, like, what was that? It didn't scare me, except it was so close. After that, I started looking around. It's like you're in this place, and you're going, why am I in this place? And then I noticed that there was this woman off to my right with a real long nose. She had green skin. She was turning this dial, and I realized she was turning the volume of lights up and down on the city in the distance. And as soon as I looked at her, she noticed I was watching her. And she said, so what else do you want? I said, what else do you have?
More and more layers of my humanity start peeling off. Finally, the last, almost the last layer, and I can't even describe what it is, but you have, at some reaches way in there, there is like the last layer of that which defines you as a human being, and it goes, you are no longer a human being. In fact, you're no longer anything you can identify.
There was no concept of time. It was so disorienting. I was so terrified. I have never in my entire life been so terrified to be blasted out of my body, to leave my body behind, to be going at warp speed backwards through my own DNA, out the other end, into the universe.
This meteor-like trip through the infinite space of the interior consciousness is up pops the picture puzzle pattern door, and I'm now whizzing through this sucker like if it was nothing. I'm flying through it. But now I know what the picture puzzle pattern door is. The picture puzzle pattern door is the farthest reaches of your humanity. This is the doorway into what defines you as a human being. When you go past that, you stop being human to a degree, and the further you get past this point, the further away you go from being a human being. But right here, this picture puzzle pattern door is everything. It's everything. It's what defines you as a human being. This picture puzzle pattern door is you.
And there was no I. There was just a sense of a witness being suspended in this incredible vaulted space, like a cathedral made out of stained glass of all imaginable colors. Unbelievable brilliance and saturation of color. Just this amazing pattern in this dome, this gigantic dome. It felt like, you know, the size of of a small planet. And there were these winged beings. I don't remember exactly what they looked, but were like angels, something like angels, that were majestically kind of flying through the space. But there was something about the quality of how they were flying that was unique. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like, I don't know, the sense of another realm that was there. My sense was at some point there was this implicit sense, this is the divine realm. This is the divine realm. And it was not like a thought, but it was like this implicit kind of grokking recognition.
It was all very, very impersonal until I got to the space where I realized that I was in the area where souls await rebirth. And I was there, and I had been there so many times before. I recognized it, and this incredible transcendent peace came over me. I have never in my life ever felt such peace. Everything was stripped away. Every hope, every fear, every attachment to the material world was completely stripped out of me. I was free to just be the essence of a soul.
After the medicine wore off, there is that familiar sensation of kind of coming back into the body. And I do remember that. That was part of almost all of those experiences of kind of coalescing back into sensory awareness and a sense of having a body and of that becoming a little more substantial. And then say, oh yeah, here I am. And I live in a body and I'm okay.
So Laura removes the eye shades. And I ask, not really with my eyes open quite yet, I ask, how long was I gone? Because I needed to know. And Rick chimes in like 15 minutes. For a moment, I'm shocked. I'm like, you know, my mind, you know, has to try to catch up because now the whole cognitive dissonance of the experience has to catch up. I was gone for 15 minutes. 1,000 years of experience in 15 minutes. Well, to say the least, it was profound. It was profound.
One of the things, besides what it does, one of the things about DMT that always fascinated me was the fact that it's such a simple molecule.
DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine, N-dimethyltryptamine. If you actually look at the ring structure of DMT itself, you only have really 4 positions that you can attach things to. So you can make diethyl or dipropyl. There are some other types of carbon chains you can attach to that end that do give you compounds that have activity, but very different from DMT.
It biosynthetically, it's 2 steps from tryptophan, right? 2 trivial enzymatic steps from tryptophan. Well, tryptophan is an amino acid, of course, and it's everywhere. So all organisms have tryptophan, and all organisms have the 2 key enzymes that lead to the synthesis of DMT. And these enzymes are very ancient enzymes. They're all over the place. They're, again, part of basic metabolism. So theoretically, anything could synthesize DMT.
DMT is astonishingly widely available in plants and animals all around the world, but so far nobody really knows why it's there or what its function is.
That's the $64 billion question, is why is DMT in our bodies? Why is it in plants, in all sorts of mammals? And what is the role it plays in humans?
The conventional wisdom 30, 40 years ago was that these things had no real function. They were just sort of physiological noise, but that's a very naive understanding. And what we now understand is that these secondary compounds are, in a sense, the language of plants. These are messenger molecules. This is what plants use to mediate their relationships with other organisms in the environment.
Why is it that human beings' central nervous system are wired to receive this experience? Must be that, there's important information to be learned.
So I don't think it's universally present in nature by accident. It has a real function. We have co-evolved with these plants. There's a purpose and a meaning to it.
With the help of two concepts that are traditionally opposed, science and spirituality, we humbly reintroduce psychedelics back into the cultural dialogue.
I was drawn to the pineal gland, which is a very small organ in the center of the brain, which has always been an object of interest and even veneration for a lot of esoteric physiological disciplines. I thought, it wasn't totally crazy to presume a pineal site of origin of DMT. Which, fit in nicely with my theory that the pineal was somehow involved in naturally occurring mystical states.
This hypothesis proposes that the pineal gland at certain times, when it's under a specific stress or stimulation, it releases a significant amount of this hormone, DMT, and it's that hormone that facilitates the entering and exiting of the soul in the body. This is what the Jewish sage mystics have been describing in a coded language for literally thousands of years.
Through meditation, through fasting, chanting, any number of techniques, there might be a burst of endogenous DMT that was correlated with mystical and near-death experiences. And I had this theory that there was a big similarity between psychedelics and experiences that were possible with a lot of meditation. And that was one of the original findings that led me to start looking for a spirit molecule, for a compound in the brain that elicited mystical experience.
And Rick Strassman, eventually he actually had to give up his research because it was so mind-blowing in the results that his volunteers were meeting the same beings in the same realm. How could that be explained within the modern Western framework of understanding reality?
I wrapped up the studies in '95 and really just had to take a break for a couple of years. I was aware of a growing sense of discomfort with what I was doing because I just couldn't explain it. And it seemed to me if I couldn't model and explain what was going on that I was doing and just, bringing people to the edge of these kinds of experiences, it seemed like I ought to. That it was a little irresponsible to be sort of pushing people off the cliff like that without really knowing exactly what it was and accepting and understanding and feeling comfortable with that model. And, I think what began dawning on me after a while once I stopped the study was that I was really dealing with a spiritual phenomenon.
What do these experiences say about the nature of reality, the nature of our minds, or the function of our brain that we can so quickly shift into these alternate realities? Let's take a step back and consider how these experiences inform us about ourselves, our consciousness, and the symbiosis of the two.
It started seeming to me that what was happening with DMT, particularly with respect to some of these reports of entering parallel or alternate or freestanding parallel sorts of realms of existences, that indeed was what their consciousness was doing. The chemistry of their brain, which is the organ of consciousness, was being changed by DMT in such a way that they could then receive information that we weren't able to receive normally.
It seems our reality is not the only reality. Occasionally the cracks reveal themselves and may even want to be discovered. As humans, we are creatures that thirst for knowledge. We spend time, money, and infinite energy searching for it, in schools, in churches, in business, and in technology. Knowledge is power, and thus our greatest quest. Dimethyltryptamine, a molecule with a complex name and the simplest ability to unlock the door to another dimension, and perhaps, just perhaps, our future evolution.
There's a work done with DMT and human volunteers in the 1950s. Now, that's important because not a single abduction case was reported before 1961. Not one. There were many UFO sightings, but no abduction case. But these DMT volunteers in the 1950s were reporting experiences that are very similar to those being reported by modern UFO abductees.
Nothing could be more tranquil than the English countryside, here on the Durham-Northumberland border. I was contacted not long ago by a gentleman who told me about the death of a sheep not far from where I'm standing. Nothing unusual about that, you might think. The ewe had died during the process of giving birth to a lamb. It was found with the lamb's head protruding from its body. The following morning, when the farmer went to retrieve the carcass, she was horrified to discover that the head of the lamb was missing, and a portion of skin and flesh had been removed from the left jaw and face of the ewe. The injuries were unlike those made by a predator, and appeared to have been carried out with surgical precision. I'd heard about strange mutilation of cattle in the United States in the past, and decided to find out more.
So what is the modus operandi of these bizarre animal deaths? David Caton provided me with a list of injuries which are commonly found. The side of the head and jaw is completely and cleanly stripped of all flesh, skin and hide, usually on the left side of the head.
Usually, always, not say always, but often the left side. So the animal's found lying on its right side, and there's a very neat strip round from the ear and the eye, right down to the nose very often, and back on the lower jaw, where all the skin and tissue is removed very cleanly from the bone. So the bone is pristine. It's like people have described it in the States as though the animal's been dead for months, laid out in the desert, being picked clean by coyotes and so on, and birds, and left to bleach in the sun. Some time ago I had a conversation with a chap who worked in an abattoir down in South Wales, and he said to do that, which is difficult in an abattoir, we would have to use high pressure steam and very hot steam to clean all the flesh without trace off a bone, to leave it in that sort of condition.
One or both ears are cleanly removed. The tongue is removed from the root, or often a slightly angled cut which removes a small slice down from the tip. One or both eyes are removed. Neat circular holes drilled through the center of the skull. Brain material is extracted via these holes. On the head and neck, 1 to 2 inch diameter shallow scoops through the skin with just a few millimeters of flesh removed. Inside these areas, smaller 1/4 inch diameter deeper holes can be found. Organs removed from the throat, such as the larynx and esophagus. A pair of small puncture wounds an inch apart in the ventral neck area, from which 100% of blood volume is extracted. There is no explanation of how this can be achieved.
If you cut yourself badly and you're bleeding, when about 60% of your blood is lost, then the heart stops and you die. Because the cardiovascular system apparently collapses then, and that's the end of you or the animal. So the big mystery is, what happens to the other 40-odd%? And how is that removed without the heart acting as a pump, to pump it out? So some very sophisticated external apparatus must be being brought to bear to do that.
Neat-edged circular and teardrop-shaped holes in the abdomen, from which all or some of the major organs are removed. There is no explanation as to how large organs are removed through these small holes.
Holes are cut into the body, and organs and tissues are cleanly removed from quite, big organs from quite small holes.
Excision of reproductive organs. Neat-edged holes in the rectal area, which are clawed out to a depth of 5 to 6 inches. Cows may have complete excision of the udder, or just missing teat portions. Decapitations and limb or tail lesions. The severed items are never found. Complete or partial removal of the internal organs. Usually other animals will not scavenge from these carcasses, and other animals grazing in the same field will keep well clear of the dead animal. Phil Hoyle examines a mutilated lamb in the Ree Valley.
But the tongue has been cut clean off, and you can see inside. You can see inside the blood. The tongue has been, you can see, has been cleanly, sharply removed, a number of inches from the end. One eye. Is it just the right eye?
Yeah.
Just the right eye is gone. There's also some sort of opening to the...
Have you got that, Phil?
Yeah. Hang on. As we've viewed this. Clean incision. Yeah, clean incision there above the right thigh, hindquarter, into the rectal area. All the rectal area is surgically, the whole cavity is totally empty. Yeah, totally empty. Obvious inaccessibility by road to this area.
Well, the most memorable thing that you would see approaching a cow mute case would be the lack of blood. There's no blood anywhere. Then the next thing you would see would be the removal of organs in such a precise manner.
In more than one case, an entire heart upon a necropsy was missing from inside the chest of an animal with no surgery. There was no excision into the chest. You've got to come up with an instrument that can take a 9-inch by 12-inch heart out of a bull or a cow without penetrating any of the tissue, any of the cartilage, no bones, no surgery. The heart is missing and the pericardium is still inside.
When I first walked up to that cow,
She was laying on her left side, no blood, no tracks. It makes the hair on the back of your head kind of want to stand up. It's an eerie feeling to walk up on something like this.
Bud, how long have you been ranching?
77 years.
How unusual is cow mutilation?
It's very unusual. It's kind of scary.
How many mutilations have you witnessed yourself?
Oh, probably 5, 6.
Any difference in the MOs? Or
pretty much always the same thing. They look like a cut on a human that's started to heal. They're smooth, just real precision, round. When they take out their tongue, their eyeballs, the cuts are not knife cuts.
Bud said the eye was missing as well as the tongue. Now, this is exactly what happened on the Galen Jones Ranch and matches hundreds of other mutilation reports as well. But the big mystery is, all of these ranchers are armed and very aware of what's going on in their property, and no one has ever been caught or brought to justice. We're about to speak with someone who risked his professional reputation by investigating cattle mutilations here in the San Luis Valley.
One of the common complaints that we had heard from ranchers was that official government agencies aren't paying them any attention.
John Paternoster is the former DA of Taos County. Now he's a district judge, but he's still involved in trying to find out who's behind these unexplained animal deaths.
They wanted some official resource to treat their problem seriously.
did you ever try to ask for help in pursuing this investigation from the state agencies like the governor's office, like the state attorney general's office?
The government agencies generally were less than willing to step up to the plate and get involved in X-Files kinds of things.
How strong is the evidence that cattle mutilations are a real phenomenon?
Well, it's real. Animals are dying and animals are being mutilated. It's what's causing it that is open to debate and investigation.
It's a serial killer is what it is.
This man, 25 head of cattle, this is the 26th. God forbid I catch you. I mean, this is serious. The feds need to investigate this and nobody's investigating it.
We need to bring somebody to justice and solve some of these crimes. If you'll mutilate an animal or kill an animal, you will probably mutilate a human being.
So the technology is real. It's been kept secret and it's been used to promote this concept that there's an alien threat to this earth. The cattle mutilations I've discovered in my research are nothing more than what's left after the government does its secret tests on the low-level radiation leakage from its atomic weapons assembly plants and atomic power plants. It's a low-level radiation monitoring project. And if you look at what's missing in the cattle, you'll see that it's just as clear as day. They take the lips, they take the tongue, they take a 6-inch patch of skin, they core out the rectum, the colon area, where those kinds of things would collect. That would pass through the digestive system. On female cows, they take the udder to check for low-level radiation in the milk. Is it being passed to the calves? And these are all grazing animals that graze on the grass where the radiation falls when it falls from the air. And it's just an incredible deception. And I'm just amazed that people have fallen for it in the manner that they have in the absence of any proof whatsoever.
The fact that they're taking sexual organs, the soft tissue, this would be exactly what you would do if you wanted to find out the impact of pollution on the world, because the pollutants would gather in the soft tissues. And the fact that the cow's chromosome pattern so closely matches human, and the fact that a lot of us eat beef, I think could be a tip-off as to why they are mutilating the cows.
What do you think's going on?
Well, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing for sure. My neighbor down here had a cow in his corral, and the next morning he gets up, the cow was missing. He found it down in the swamp, this much snow, and no tracks.
Was the cow mutilated?
Yes.
No.
So somehow it got over a fence,
yes,
wound up in a field, no tracks around it.
In 6 inches of snow.
The snow was completely absent of any marks whatsoever. So clearly it dropped from a height into the fresh snow.
So you're saying that somehow these cows are being lifted out of a corral. And do you know what methods might be used to lift a cow like that?
I have no idea how they're lifting them out of there, but I know these cows are weighing anywhere from 12 to 1,400 pounds. You got to have something pretty strong to pick up that kind of an animal.
Have you heard any sort of helicopters in the air?
The only one that I've heard say anything about an unusual aircraft was Mr. Girodo, the sheriff at that time. He said that there were some bright lights that came over the mesa, but there was no sound.
Cows have been found draped over fences. Some seem to have been dropped through trees. There are also signs of broken bones and an impact crater beneath the dead animal.
We found marks on the cattle around their legs, appear to be clamp marks. We've also found marks on their hide where appear to be straps that have been placed on some of these reports. Somehow these cattle are being removed from the area, they're taken somewhere, their blood's removed, their internal organs are removed, and then they're brought back. Why? We don't know.
The question became important enough to prompt a number of American senators to ask the U.S. government to get involved in the cattle mutilation mystery. In 1975, Floyd Haskell, a senator from the state of Colorado, asked the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, to be put in charge of the cattle cases. His request was denied. In 1979, Harrison Schmitt, a senator from the state of New Mexico and a former astronaut, called for a federal investigation into the cattle mutilations. The result was Operation Animal Mutilation, chaired by Kenneth Rommel, a former FBI agent. After 1 year, the Rommel report was published. The conclusion? The vast majority of mutilations are caused by predators and scavengers. For some, it only seems logical that the U.S. government itself is behind the mutilations, or complicit in them at the very least. They cite the presence of black helicopters, unmarked military-style aircraft, passing over or near where the mutilated cattle are found as a telltale sign of the government's role.
Who really is responsible for this?
I do know that bovine hemoglobin is genetically very, very similar to that of humans. And I've also read that the government's conducting tests so that in case there's this large disaster and we need a large amount of human blood, but we don't have it, what we do is we resort to bovine blood as a substitute.
There is no alien harvest, but it's a great smokescreen and it's working very well.